All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to our 17th meeting for the Cornell Bitcoin Club. My name's Brian. I'll be presenting today. Today, we will be talking about buying and self-custodying Bitcoin. So to start on our agenda, we have buying and holding Bitcoin, where and how to buy, mainly using exchanges, introduction to wallets, both hot and cold, and how to differentiate between the two, seed phrases and security, multi-signature custody of wallets, and Bitcoin's UTXO model. So to begin, your keys, your Bitcoin. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Andreas Antonopoulos. Sorry if I mispronounced his name. So then what does success for today look like? We want everyone to understand that custodying your Bitcoin means that it's your property. And it's most likely something that we've done before. Bitcoin and self-custody is the only way to ensure that it's your money and that no one else owns it. And then Bitcoin in an ETF or an exchange is not exactly your Bitcoin. However, self-custody isn't for everyone. So choose to use a custodian, hold them to a standard of implementing good proofs. So buying and holding Bitcoin, what does it mean to own Bitcoin? Owning Bitcoin means that you have access to both the private keys. And that gives you access to the blockchain network and more. So self-custody versus custodial ownership. Ownership is defined by controlling the private keys. Without self-custody, you aren't truly owning the Bitcoin. And custodial ownership means that a third-party service holds the private keys for you. For example, Robinhood. And this leaves you at risk of hacks, government intervention, or any type of corporate things happening. How do you buy and store Bitcoin? You can buy Bitcoin on various exchanges, which we're going to touch on, and you can store them on wallets, which we'll also touch on. So to begin with, exchanges. How do you buy Bitcoin? There are two main types of exchanges. There's centralized, commonly categorized as CEX, or decentralized, also commonly categorized as DEX. For centralized, they're usually much simpler in usability. They provide fast transactions, very beginner friendly. And because it's a company at the core of it, they offer customer support, but they are susceptible for risks of hacks and hence and more, which we've discussed. And then below are two very popular current centralized exchanges, Coinbase and Binance. And on the other side, we have decentralized exchanges, which is more peer-to-peer trading. So it's like a market where they just match you to a buyer or seller. There's no main middleman. In centralized, they're the middleman. Generally, they have slower transactions, and there's a little bit of a curve to it. It is a little less beginner friendly. And because it's decentralized, there's no main company behind it. So you're not going to receive customer support. And there's a higher risk of scams and everything because the way exchanges work, especially on a decentralized, is that anyone is allowed to list their coin. Meanwhile, on a centralized, they may have a lot more checks and balances to who lists their coins. Some common or really popular decentralized exchanges are SushiSwap and Uniswap, but those aren't exactly ones that we would recommend, as you can see by the X's. Here are some of Ella's recommendations. Most of these are US based. Cash App, very popular. I'm sure we've all seen it or maybe even use it. Yeah. And then just a quick touch up on New York State regulation. New York State just requires, it means that you will be involved in much more rigorous compliance standards and everything as they review your things. It also means investor protection. New York State Attorney General will monitor this company a lot more aggressively and more. So on to the next point, KYC, know your customer. KYC is a regulatory process to verify the identity of customers, usually used to assess the risks involved with each person. And this comes in the form of very common personal information such as IDs, social securities, your social security, your driver's license, birth certificate, passport, proof of addresses, anything of that sort. And onto wallets. So we have hardware, software, and then they can be categorized as both hot or cold. So what is a wallet in Bitcoin? A wallet in Bitcoin holds your private keys and gives you access to manage your Bitcoin. When we refer to cold wallets, we usually mean they're offline or they're not directly connected to the internet. Meanwhile, hot wallets mean that they have some type of connection to the internet. Hardware wallets, usually they're the cold wallets, very secure. You need a physical access to device, such as you need like some type of connection to the computer. Requires an upfront investment because you need to buy something to hold onto it. And it's usually really good for long-term storage. Just a picture of them. And then software, slightly less secure than hardware because it'll always be connected to the internet. Usually really easy to access and set up, generally available for free, so no upfront investment. And which we have an example of MetaMask, but also not exactly on our recommendations. We recommend these two. Just some more pictures of hardware wallets since it wasn't included before. A really popular one is Jade here on the top right. Another one is Ledger here on the left. And usually the way it works is it's a USB type of device that you plug into your computer and it will store your private keys so you don't have to like exactly remember them, and there'll be like a seed phrase behind it. So even if the hardware wallet's taken, your information isn't exactly compromised. So on to multi-signature types of custody. So what is multi-signature custody? Beforehand, we were talking about single signature custody, which meant that you needed a single key to access your Bitcoin. This time it's just multiple versions of that, multiple keys. So it's usually given by an equation, M over N, where M is the number of keys you need to sign onto the platform to access your coin, and N are the total keys in existence. Very common use cases for this are 2 to 3. Like you need 2 keys of 3 that exist in order to access your Bitcoin. And this is great for self-custody because in case you ever lose a key, you still have your other 2. Meanwhile, in single signature custody, if you lost your key, it's lost, and no one likes that. And then there's also collaborative custody, which is when you can give anyone like an extra version of your key. Usually this is someone you trust, or there's a lot of corporations in the space centered around this, where they help you custody your coin, and it's more self-custody because you have access to your own keys. So moving forward, a bigger emphasis on collaborative custody. So if we look here, the red means that it's generally not recommended. Meanwhile, the yellow is vulnerable to loss. This one in the middle is a dark or a lighter green, means that this is the best for most people. And the darker green means that it's unnecessarily complicated, but usually good for corporations. And on the red, we just have like single security type of wallets, single signature, sorry. So this is just one key exists, one wallet, or one key, one version of it. This is, you need one key to access your wallet. There are 2 keys, and then henceforth until 5. Here we have, you need every single key that exists in order to access it, and that's vulnerable to loss because if you lose one key, then you lose access to your entire wallet. Here, the one I was mentioning before, the 2 to 3 type of custody, where you need 2 of the 3 keys that exist in order to access. And then more here, we have 2 of 4, 3 of 4, 2 of 5, 3 of 5, and 4 of 5. Those are, as it says, very complicated, usually not the best for your day-to-day person. But as I mentioned before, there are some companies in the space where they will hold onto a key or 2 just in case you ever lose it. And they can supply your key. So even if you lose a key, you don't necessarily lose access to your entire wallet. So going forward, want to talk about Bitcoin's UTXOs. What does that stand for? It means unspent transaction outputs. It's very similar to cash. Let's say you have like a $10 bill and you need to pay someone and you need to pay something that's worth $5. You can't really rip the $10 bill in half and just give them half of it. Instead, you'll give them the 10 and then you'll get 5 and some change back, assuming there's like tax. So UTXOs represent the whole amount of Bitcoin, and they can be as small as 1 Satoshi. I think the exchange is one Bitcoin is equal to like 500 million, 100 million Satoshis. And then here we just have a quick model. I have a video prepared for us, so this is just like for presentation. But you can combine your UTXO, your UXTOs by sending yourself a transaction. Onto our video.
And so, can I quickly just a little
Yeah.
why you might? So, we haven't done fully kind of Bitcoin mining yet, but you have a key, and you can pull up mempool.space, which I've shown sometimes to see, basically how much am I tipping this miner to add my transaction into the block? And let's just say that that key is 10 cents, 10 Satoshis per VByte, which is how the weighting is done. Well, if you have a UTXO, an unspent transaction output that's like 5 Satoshis, you're stuck because your 5 is less than that minimum fee. And so it's in your interest, and there's a whole kind of balancing of security and convenience to be able to use your UTXOs of how many you want to consolidate. And it's really just a matter of basically sending it back to yourself. So that's what Brad's going to show us in this is what is an UTXO and how does that really work.
And outputs. Let's imagine that Chad wants to pay Bob 5 BTC. And let's assume that this 7.25 is the only Bitcoin that Chad has. The way the network processes this transaction is it's going to take that UTXO of 7.25, that's the input, and it's going to break it off into 3 UTXOs, the outputs. Bob will receive a UTXO of 5 Bitcoin. The miner that processed this transaction earns a fee for doing so. And to keep the math simple, let's say the fee for this transaction was 0.01 Bitcoin. So an output of 0.01 Bitcoin is created to send to the miner. The transaction fees earned by miners is variable. Keep that in mind because we're going to circle back as this is the key idea of the video. Lastly, Chad will receive a UTXO.
We won't touch on mining too much, but yeah. Oh. The video. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little frozen.
Oh, it should be, yeah. My computer really needs to restart and
Okay.
And outputs. The miner that processed this transaction earns, keep that in mind because we're going to circle back as this is the key idea of the video. Lastly, Chad will receive a UTXO of the remaining 2.24 BTC. This process of inputs and outputs is similar to spending physical cash. If you purchase a good that costs $50 and you use a $100 bill, you don't rip the bill in half. You hand over the 100 and receive a $50 bill as change. Similarly, in your physical wallet, you can have $100 and that $100 can be a single $100 bill, or it can be a combination of smaller bills such as 10s, 20s, 50s, etc. Let's go back to our example of Chad and Bob. Bob now has a 5 Bitcoin UTXO that he received from Chad. And let's imagine that Bob runs a consulting business and he charges 5 Bitcoin for his services. On top of this 5 Bitcoin UTXO he got from Chad, he has 9 other 5 Bitcoin UTXOs that he got from other clients. So his total Bitcoin balance and what is displayed in his wallet software is 50 Bitcoin. Now let's say Bob wants to use some of that Bitcoin to buy a house from Joe that costs 27 Bitcoin. The network doesn't subtract 27 from 50 in order to process this. It selects enough UTXOs as inputs in order to send the 27 Bitcoin. 6 of these 5 Bitcoin UTXOs equaling 30 Bitcoin are used as inputs for the transaction. Through these 6 inputs, 3 outputs are created. Joe gets a UTXO of 27 Bitcoin. The miner that processed the transaction receives a transaction fee of, let's say, 0.06 BTC. Lastly, 2.94 BTC remain from the 30 BTC that were used as inputs. So that 2.94 is sent back to Chad in the form of a fresh UTXO. As you'll notice, the transaction fee was higher for this transaction than it was for Bob's transaction to Chad. This is not because Bob sent 30 Bitcoin compared to Chad sending just 5. This is because Bob's
The video is a little frozen, but I could pick up here. So here, because the 50 Bitcoin was split into 10 separate pieces, that was equal to 10 inputs onto the blockchain, onto the Bitcoin blockchain. And basically the amount of inputs you're putting in is equal to the gas fees that you'll pay when exchanging with another person. There's an example later in this video, but at one point in history, there was a $2 billion transaction that costed like $5 or less to send
This
over
is
the
why it's
entire
possible
thing.
to send hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin in a transaction and not pay exponentially more in fees than someone sending a few dollars worth of Bitcoin.
Think about like how expensive it would be to move gold, that energy gold, and then you have security, and all of that.
You risk your life moving that much gold. Yeah.
And then moving forward
And
onto
outputs.
the next part, I wanted to highlight addresses and the history of addresses on the block on Bitcoin. So here we just have the type of address. It's in order that it's seen. So these two were first seen in January 2009, with the next two around 2012, and then the most recent one in 2021. This is the total supply that was used on it. The most popular one by far is the P2PKH, which I'll touch on more. And that's seen 43% of like total usage. This is just saying like its overall use. If it's like obsolete, if it's currently like increasing or more people using it, or if people are decreasing their usage of it. And then the encoding, prefix, and characters, which is like super technical on it. But yeah. So the one I want to highlight, the P2PKH, stands for pay to public key hash. This is the most popular one. When people usually talk about Bitcoin and wallets, they'll mention, oh, send it to my like public key. This is the introduction to public key. The one before it, which saw very little usage, was basically just you had to provide a valid signature matched to a key. And then going forward, another very, very important one is SegWit, which is this one down here, P2W, oh, P2WSH. This one, introduced in 2017. SegWit is very, very important. It's short for segregated witness, and it was designed to make the network a lot faster and cheaper and more secure. And it did this by separating the part of the transaction that contains the signature or like the witness's data from the rest of the transaction. And this made it take up a lot less space. For context, a Bitcoin block, I believe, has 4 megabytes. There's huge history on that. It was named the Bitcoin Wars, or the block size wars. We could touch on that in another meeting. But yeah, so by reducing the overall space being used, meant that it would reduce the overall fees and it would speed up the network because you could fit more onto that 4 megabyte small block. On top of that, SegWit also solved a problem called the transaction malleability problem, which made it possible for second layer technologies to be built on the Bitcoin network. One of those is the Lightning Network, which we're actually a Lightning node of. I think we did that 2 or 3 meetings ago. And yeah, so right now the bottom 3, including SegWit, are very much on the increase, and P2PHK is slowing down slowly. Yeah, and then this is the attendance code for today. Feel free to scan it.
It's like 6:30, 6:40.
Yeah. So yeah,
6:30.
yeah, like 6:35.
So Brian has to run a bit early, so I thought for the rest of the meeting, oh, your question.
Yeah, okay. I think the code expired, so I have to
Oh,
fix that.
no worries. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll move here. One thing that we can do is actually, I just jotted down some notes of maybe some more topics we can discuss, like we can talk a little bit about the block size tour. And then also, if you want some help actually setting up one of these apps or questions on clarifying different concepts or the different pieces of it. I thought we could also do that because next week as well, we're gonna be playing some games where we're actually using Bitcoin in sending transactions. So it takes a lot of touch points. I think it would really wrap your mind around how all this works, like what's the point of them, and so it's good to just have those touch points. So, and maybe Brian, would you? Let me see. Maybe I'll just come up with you.
If you guys have any questions about anything, feel free to ask. I can give more context
Yeah.
on any of the points or re-explain it. Yeah.
So when you mentioned a little bit of the concept proof of reserves. Do you know a little bit about? We'd love to maybe get a little color on that.
Do you want to take that?
So,
Proof of reserve?
River, let me go back. Is it this one?
The
Yes.
6th one.
Oh, it's frozen though.
Yeah. You could
Oh, I think it's going. Actually, there's a video. Do you know if the video is still comment is in here? Maybe.
yeah, I don't think I removed it.
Let's see. Oh yeah. So essentially, just TLDR, showing that the Bitcoin is actually that custodian actually has your Bitcoin. Like, where is it on?
Sorry, I forgot a
Yes.
second question. Why is that important? Sorry, that's what.
So if you, okay, keep in your head, own your money. Like right now, if you open your banking, if you have your checking account or whatever, like that's more of a coupon that these dollars, whatever currency it is, that they're yours. But they could, for any reason, drain your account, lock you out of your account, and this happens all over the world. The Wi-Fi could, like the servers could just go down, and then all your money, you don't own that. That's, it was in your name, but you don't have that anymore. And so proof of reserves, if you taking this into the Bitcoin realm, it is showing that no, you do own your money, and here is, or we have your money, and here is where it is. So if you go on to Coinbase, for instance, which does not have proof of reserves, and you open your account and you see, okay, I have a 0.1 Bitcoin balance. Do you have any way to verify that you actually have that? Do you have any way to verify that Coinbase actually has that Bitcoin attributed to you? No. And so if what Bitcoin is offering is the way for all 8 billion people in this world to actually own their money, to have property rights, which then sets the foundation to protect all your other rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, anything else like that, you need to know that you have that property. So River, earlier this year, they announced proof of reserves saying, we 100% of what our clients, see in their account balances, we have a company called Hoseki to also kind of audit the holdings and hope it's not just, monetary coupon, like we actually have what we say we have, protecting the individual and their funds. A lot of banks, so in COVID, banks used to have 10% of the customer funds to, once there's a bank run, like everyone wants the money, that doesn't do you any good. But banks were required to be reserved up to 10%. In COVID, they took that reserve requirement down to 0, and they have never put it back, at least last time I checked last spring. And so, there's no accountability layer there. So proof of reserves, accountability essentially. Was that clear, or did anyone? So there's a quick, I don't think it's very long. Let me see.
Hi.
Well,
I'm allocation.
it's 13 minutes, so we won't play the whole thing. But no, in the slides, there's a whole introduction, an article really describing what proof of reserves is. And then on the slides, just popping back here, is a diagram, which Brian did a really nice job of having, like the diagram for the UTXO. Oh, thank you so much. So here, fractional reserve, this reserve ratio of 10%, like that is our monetary system, fractional reserve banking. And what full reserve is, it's 100%. It's not 0, it's not 10, it's 100. We have what we say we have. So if you use a custodian, just make sure they actually have your Bitcoin, is the moral of the story. And
Coinbase and Binance have a similar proof of reserve as Kraken, we will say, or no?
not to my knowledge. Yeah, not to my knowledge. Yes, and you can there. So Brian, are you familiar with Arkham Intelligence or those kind of deep dive that tracks the addresses? Like,
Yeah.
there's companies that try to, so Bitcoin is pseudonymous, not anonymous, meaning you're like, I don't know that Brian might own an address, but I could theoretically see his address. So it's concealing, like technically I could point it back to you, but I don't know you're you.
Yeah. Comes back to like KYC, know your customer.
So there's various firms that try to track the holdings of, like, I think they just came out, like they figured out Tesla hadn't actually sold all of their Bitcoin, or I super skimmed this tweet, so I might have that a little wrong. But essentially they just see who's moving what, like they have some US government addresses identified and to just try to track. And there's a whole really kind of interesting field, which is a little bit over my head, called on-chain analysis or on-chain metrics. And it's we can show some charts on that, but it shows you, you know, how long have people, what's the average time people have held their Bitcoin and not moved it. And this is where some of those address, like the different types of addresses are in there, because they all have different time periods when they were mainly used. So that all feeds into helping you get more information and on-chain. And I'm not doing this a good justice of an overview, but it's really fascinating to go into, which we kind of people are interested in at some point. Yes, any other questions that people maybe had?
Right, I know you have some lead, so I have.
Yes, you
one.
have, yeah.
So you spoke a little bit of decentralized and centralized Coinbase finance and non-Coinbase finance. What, as you kind of dig deeper, what is your personal opinion? Like what would be a good point of entry for folks wanting to like just explore a little bit? What do you see? You know, just as work in your journey.
I think in the perspective of someone who just wants to like explore and
That's it,
see
just
how
exploring.
things work. I'm not sure if I would agree with this. I
No,
would say
I want, doesn't matter what I,
for just like pure like, you know, like a whatever percentage of your wealth or just like a very small percentage to just see how things go, I would say that these exchanges, both centralized and decentralized, would work just fine. But I feel like once you really scale up and are investing a considerable percentage, you'd want to focus more on more like established exchanges or just more exchanges that have a lot more, I guess, like rigidity to them
Sure.
and aren't as shady, or I don't know if shady is the best word, but haven't been under the wrong light for any reasons.
And if
But
you
yeah.
were to use those, any one of those exchanges,
Yeah.
is it easy to just get the coins out of there? Like, you know, if you
For
speak a little bit about that, maybe.
yeah, from a like case to case, like an analysis and exchange to an exchange. I don't know them too well. I've personally used Uniswap in the past. I know SushiSwap has a very questionable history with FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried and its original founder. But for me on Uniswap, I used it to exchange some of my Ethereum to Solana, and that was a very, very like quick, streamlined process. But I was exchanging maybe like $100 at most.
Yeah.
So in like the grand scheme of things, like a smaller amount.
Sure. And like if I wanted to buy $100 of Coinbase, can I just withdraw in my Bitcoin to one of the wallets you mentioned? They said fairly easy to do that.
At $100 fund, most likely, but Ella has some personal experience that I'm not, if you want to touch on that.
well, I was just locked out of Coinbase for 3 months, and I really discovered, at least at the time, like the customer service, no one talked to each other, and it was, yeah, it was, so if anyone ever calls you and says, "Hi, I'm Coinbase customer service," it is a scam. They don't call you. I know because, well, I just know, but also I probably spent like 8 hours one day on their hold line, just waiting Thank you. But to, I think, some of Sal's question, you might not be able to withdraw everything at once. Like sometimes they cap you at like 1,000 or 2,000. It's not just free access to your money anytime. They could theoretically put a hold on your account if they think there's suspicious activity. Happened to me. So just keep that in mind. There's always a convenience, privacy, security trade-off that you are embarking on. And so when you evaluate all of these things, just know what your needs are and what the trade-offs and incentives are. Or just think about it as you're going through it. Ask yourself that question.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Anyone else have any additional questions about any topic? Yeah. Why not MetaMask?
I censored Brian a little bit. I just don't, I only want you all to be on the absolute best footing. I only use Bitcoin only exchanges or products built by Bitcoiners, products that if you think about Bitcoin, it's a lot about value for value and don't trust, verify, self-custody. And I don't see the values that I really look for in a product in MetaMask. So that's why I don't recommend it to you all, but
I can help a little bit because I have a very specific answer to that. How to survive two bear markets. MetaMask has been found, and then we'll talk about it later. It's very easy to just kind of track your identity in a way that is neither decentralized or centralized. It's like a weird in between. So from a purely privacy perspective, it is not it's fairly suboptimal compared to other choices, which I think whether you're playing with $10, $100, or 100,000, you really, those are key priorities if you get into space. That's a great question.
yes. Yeah, Mark.
Also, I might be wrong, but I think MetaMask was developed by a company called Consensus.
Yeah.
And I think that company was kind of linked with or had some kind of affiliation with JP Morgan and one of I can't remember, but like OGs would say that MetaMask has some links with traditional finance, so
Yeah.
take away with that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why, so actually one of the points I wanted to touch on was a little bit of like an analogy, or I process all of this through analogies, so hopefully it's helpful. Bye, Brian, thank you so much. As you're thinking about, okay, do I use a hardware wallet, a software wallet? Do I want a hot wallet, a cold wallet? There's a time and place for a lot of these different options. And so if you think about Bitcoin, let's just think of it as cash. Like you all probably have maybe like $10 in your backpack or like an emergency 20 in the back of your phone case. You just want to have easy access if you need it. Maybe then you want just like a software, custodial, Lightning wallet, just, quick access to funds. Then next stage, maybe you want an option where it's like your checkings account in your bank and you keep a little bit more money there. And so for something like that, maybe you put some more money into a Lightning wallet like that, or you think about moving into a hardware wallet. And then you can also think about your retirement savings, like money you're not touching for years and years. With that, you might think about like a multi-sig, a really like a much more high secure setup. And so I wanted to circle back just to the very origin of what Bitcoin came into this world, like one of the problems that it was touching on, and this will tie into the UTXO model. So the cypherpunks, they really look to the values or the properties that physical cash embodied in terms of privacy, and the fact that, I could give Matthew a $10 bill, and Matthew and I would know that. There's no digital footprint. There's no record of what I bought. Like if you think today on Amazon, they know everything about your spending habits and what you're buying and when you're buying it. Only Matthew and I know the information. from that transaction. And so what they saw was, okay, you know, we don't have any way to protect this ability into the digital realm. And so some people talk about Bitcoin as digital cash, or kind of taking in some of those properties of being able to transact without a trusted intermediary. Like if I want to send money from maybe my bank account to Matthew's bank account, I can't just do that between the two of us. Our banks know, like, there's many more people in the middle, intermediaries. And so with talking about Bitcoin's UTXO model, think about just like if I only have a $10 bill for Matthew, but I owe Matthew $5, well, then he'll give me back $5 in change. And so I could not understand the UTXO model for the longest time until actually watching that video and thinking about it from the terms of cash. And so I have a $10 bill, I owe Matthew 5, I give him the whole 10, and then Matthew gives me 5 back. Yeah.
I heard once of another metaphor about
Yeah.
UTXO. In like technical people would sometimes call that a foundry, like
Okay.
the comparison with a gold nugget
Yes.
that you would melt to extract just the proportion you want,
Okay. Yeah.
and then sending just the slight amount that you
Back.
want, and then melt it back again and store it, etc.
Yeah.
I think that's a great comparison.
Yeah, I like that as well. That is good. So let me see. I was trying to take some notes when Brian was talking about what I thought we could maybe look at. Let me see.
Also, I
Yeah.
want to follow up on hardware wallets.
Oh yeah, yes.
The first step is to buy one, and the second step is to use one. And there's something scary about sending your crypto from
Oh, it's terrifying.
centralized exchange to
It's terrifying.
It's like, yeah, to your hardware wallet.
Those 10 minutes on average are horrible. So yes. Okay, let's chat about that. Yes. So one thing that I wanted, okay, you forget, you know, hardware wallet, software wallet, you can know your Bitcoin in your head. It's all an interface for helping you basically memorize 12 to 24 words. So let me pull it up. And this is, I don't know if anyone's been following like the Bitcoin, like is speech or any of, not sure if this might be something we haven't really discussed. But let me see, let me just pull up for everyone. Okay, so. Okay, so this is BIP 39. There's 2,048 words that are used to construct what's called the seed phrases. So this is between 12 to 24 words. And if you know those words, you have your Bitcoin. Something else, and I might say this slightly wrong, but the hash function that Bitcoin uses, just bear with me, there are more combinations to that than there are atoms in the universe. And so that it's like the odds of bumping into like a singular atom, like think about that. That's how hard it is to guess a seed phrase. And so when, to what Mark was saying, when you get one of these hardware wallets, it comes with a set of words. And there's also ways you can make your own seed phrases. We can actually do an exercise with that. But you put those words into, and I should preface, they all do this a little bit differently, but you put those words into that wallet. And then if you ever lose that wallet, but you have you can set up all of your Bitcoin again on another device. So something I wanted to touch on the multi-sig and single sig, even if you have a single hardware device, you are securing two things. You're securing the physical device and you're securing those words. I have actually forgotten the PIN to a hardware wallet and I was completely panicking. So this was very early when I was figuring all this out. I used Coinbase initially. I didn't know any better. And I moved the Bitcoin from Coinbase after I was unlocked out after 3 months. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need a hardware wallet. I bought a ledger, which I don't recommend you all buying a ledger because they have had a lot of hacks. I like cold cards.
Just adding to that, they
Yeah.
literally just hack the listserv of your username. So if you gave them your first name, last name address, which they collected that, we can get into that. They have it now. So you can imagine the risk at that point. So like super high risk.
If you're thinking about privacy and how am I, yeah, all of that. So I was like, okay, I'm on it. Like I have a ledger and I had my 12 words that I loaded onto this ledger. I pin, and the pin just makes it easy. So you don't have to enter these words every time. You just remember your pin and then you can access your Bitcoin. I forgot my pin and I locked myself out of the ledger. And I was totally panicked. I was like, oh my gosh, I have just lost my Bitcoin. Like I made it not much Bitcoin at all, but I was like, oh shoot. But then I was like, no, wait, I have my words. And so I just got another ledger and I just put my words onto the new device and I had my Bitcoin. It was not lost. So do not lose your words. Memorize your words. That is your Bitcoin. And that is how this is literally the definition of how you can take your property with you anywhere in the world. Because if you have those words in your head, you have your Bitcoin. So,
When you say words, like they might not know, but it's literally.
oh, sorry, I thought this, we just showed this picture. But we'll do this again. So it's literally like galaxy or ice or, so actually this is really blurry.
Yeah, that's
Let me see if there's a better.
like those words.
Oh,
pop up
here.
on the screen, so literally, like you hit. It's a little. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I think there was a better. Oh, okay. This is clear. Like they're very like pizza's a word. And so anyways, these are the words that you're memorizing. And so that's what you really want to secure. So even if you think, okay, it's one thing I'm taking care of, it's two. You have the hardware wallet, but you also need the words. And so then when you go into this whole idea of multi-signature, picture in your mind like a digital safety deposit box. And to unlock the box, you need, let's say, 2 out of the 3 keys. And so what this means, Unchained, for instance, is a collaborative custody service or company. They also have other good products. You are securing 4 things, but does anyone want to guess what those 4 things might be? So we have single sig, where we said we have a hardware wallet, like a cold card, and your seed phrase, your words. If we're now thinking, okay, I need to secure 4 things, what do we think those 4 could be? It's a little bit of a trick question. So if I have 1 key, and 1 key is the 12 words, and the hardware wallet, and with multi-sig, I have 2 keys, and the like Unchained has a 3rd key. What do we think perhaps those 4 things we're securing are? And I might not be saying this clearly, so please tell me if there's point of confusion. And actually, let me get props.
asking, what are you securing? As in like, there's 3 keys
Mhm.
and 1 device.
There's three, there's, no, so
There's the hardware wallet.
I'll use the props, but I think the trick question comes from if there's three.
Yeah, I'll use the,
It might make sense for you.
okay, and this is actually good because I have 2 keys that look the same and one that looks a little different.
I think we have some engagement from the chat.
Oh,
Right?
Just like ask,
Yeah.
is this the equivalent of like a bank vault? Cause I know there's
Vault.
like a bank vault where it's
Vault.
like, yeah, vault, I guess, you know, where you have like. A certain amount, like a certain combination or like 3 different locks and you have to open in order to like larger funds, I guess. It would be different from like. Something like tether and kind of like pull out the cash really quickly to like pay for the Starbucks.
okay, I have my props and let me turn the camera on for the people on Zoom, although I think you all are familiar. Okay, so let's see, I can't see myself, but I'll just take it that other people can see me. Okay, so I have, let's just take these 3 physical keys that I have. Let's pretend each one of these is a cold card. Or for the sake of looking somewhat similar, we can say it is like a treasure, which is this down here in the bottom left. Okay, so let's say these are my hardware wallets, or we can call them keys. Now, each one, when we set it up, we'll take this piece of paper as like our 12 words that we load onto our key. And now this is, we have a seed phrase and a key. So 2 things that we're securing. When you enter collaborative custody and you have 3 keys that can unlock your digital safety deposit box. And this is helping reduce the risk of a single point of failure, or what people in the space kind of call a $5 wrench attack, which is someone could buy like a wrench that's $5 and attack you for all of your Bitcoin, all of your money. And so if you have like some multi-system where you actually on your own cannot access the Bitcoin, you cannot give the like there's nothing to give. There's layers to this, whereas also in some ways it might be good to have like a small amount of Bitcoin in some wallet on your phone, because people just might not be knowledgeable to the fact that you can't attack it, and then we wouldn't want like someone to kill you or take your life, because it's just like you're too smart for it. So okay, oh shoot, what do we think? So Unchained, let's say, has 1 key and a seed phrase, and then you have 2 keys. So what might be your 4 items that you're securing?
It's a little bit what you're saying. A little bit.
Yes. So, oh, okay. Actually, this is good. So let's say that this paper towel roll, let's say this is like my digital vault, and I need to unlock the Bitcoin in this vault. I need 2 keys to unlock this. But let's say I'm at school, or I'm not home, or I'm traveling and I don't want to have both of my keys with me. You could be like, I just have my 1. It's not enough for me to unlock anything here, but Unchained could come along and serve as your 2nd. So they only have 1, so they could never access your Bitcoin by themselves, but if you authorize them, they could sign the signature as your 2nd. So, but if you're just thinking, okay, I want to use this, like if I'm thinking about my retirement and I'm not going to touch this Bitcoin for a long time, if I think multi-sig collaborative custody is correct for me, what are the 4 pieces that you need to keep safe? George, yeah. Yes, you got it. Exactly. You need your first pair of key and seed phrase and your second pair of key and seed phrase. However, it is as I literally experienced myself, if you forget or if you lose one of your hardware wallet keys, or you break it or something happens to it, you don't need to fret because of kind of two main reasons. One, Unchained still can serve as your second key and you have one kind of package intact. But two, if you have your seed phrase, which is really like, we have to protect this, you can buy another Trezor physical hardware wallet and load your seed phrase onto that. And you are okay. You still have both of your keys to your Bitcoin. And then what was I wanted to share? Oh, going to back to, oh no, my computer's frozen. Well, okay, here we go. Not to fret if you think, oh, but what if something like Unchained or Casa is another one? What if they go out of business? Well, then have I lost my Bitcoin because I have this digital safety deposit box with them? Nope, you still have it, because I believe they use, when you set up your vault, they give you, forget the exact terminology, maybe someone in the chat would correct me, but basically like the rootkit or download files that you need to then recreate your digital safety deposit box. I believe they use Caravan yourself. So you can set all of this up yourself. Like Bitcoin, don't trust verify is a big phrase in the space. Proof of work, doing the work. You can do it all yourself and be purely self-sovereign in all of this, not reliant on anyone else. And so some other options, Caravan, Sparrow Wallet, Electrum, Spectre, and I'll make a note, Sparrow Wallet is a really good tool for you with like managing UTXO consolidation and just all of that work, which we can chat about at a later meeting as well. But wanted to just draw back this chart for a minute because some collaborative custody models, maybe they require like 4 out of 5 keys to sign. And one of those keys in some instances are like your cell phone could be a key. But what happens if you lose your phone or you leave it on a train or something? Like that's not great. That's a trade-off for you to consider. But more numbers of keys does not necessarily mean more security because so as this model depicts, 2 out of 3 is really the consensus of what is your most secure, best option there. But I feel like this was a lot of information. So is there a point anywhere in here that I could go back and clarify, or where I did a poor job explaining or understanding the trade-offs at all? Okay, so real quick, I want to touch on the block size wars, because Brian mentioned that. So essentially, it really helps me make decisions or think through options if I just go to the root of the not problem, but every blockchain encounters the blockchain trilemma, which is, oh, actually, this is perfect. We kind of have a triangle on the board. One point is decentralization, like you want to be very decentralized. One point is security. We want this blockchain to be very secure. And then one point is scalability. We want to really be able to process a lot of transactions, which, money, you want many people to be able to transacting and using, because think about get me coffee upstairs, if we all our passing times are 5-10 minutes, one person would be able to get their coffee. That would really not work. And so every blockchain, when it comes into the world, involves, I can pick 2 out of the 3. Do I want to be really decentralized and secure? Do I want to be really decentralized and scalable? You pick your combination. But to cut to the chase, if you want to build a blockchain with a foundation that will last, one that's made of something like concrete or steel or this building that we're in, and not one of sand that, might look nice for a while, but ultimately fall apart when the storm comes, you need to choose decentralization and security. And then on layer 2, Brian talked about the Lightning Network, that can address the issue of scalability, processing more transactions per second. And so anyways, I bring that up because with the block size wars, there was one side that said, hey, let's make our blocks bigger so that we can fit more transactions in them. And I said, no, we can't make them bigger because that will then sacrifice our priority of decentralization, everyone being able to be a node and verify transactions and download the entire Bitcoin blockchain. If these blocks are too big, then not everyone will be able to have a copy and be able to verify and look and see. And so that was the war of, are we making the blocks bigger or smaller? And it was around this idea of how can we make Bitcoin more scalable? How can it process more transactions per second? Because Bitcoin can process base layer like 7 transactions per second. And on layer 2, like Lightning, I believe the number, it's closer to like 1 million. Whereas if you think about like the Visa network, that one's around 20 to 30,000, I believe. And to Layla's question about the 10 minutes. So the average time for a new, and we'll talk about this next week, a Bitcoin block is mined is about every 10 minutes. And that all feeds into the presented known monetary policy of there's 21 million Bitcoin that will be mined over a span of 131 years. So that in the year 2140, all Bitcoin will have been mined. So that the average, a new block gets added to the blockchain, or time chain, as I think is a better term, is about every 10 minutes. And so when Mark brought up, it's a whole other thing to when you're actually using a hardware wallet. Well, let's say you're going from Coinbase or, if you're transacting on the base layer, its average is about 10 minutes, but it's an average, doesn't mean it's 10 minutes. Like I was looking the other day, there was like 59 minutes in the gap between the blocks. So you're just sitting there and you're like, oh, I just sent my Bitcoin and I don't know like where it is, and your heart's racing, but then it lands and it confirms and you feel such a sense of relief. But I think that's really, what's the like kind of, I don't know, maybe cheesy quote, like if you have fear or something, it means you're trying, like it's a sign that you're actively engaged. If you're going through the process of, the steps of really making sure you own your money, well, then that's incredible because you are really taking agency and accountability over yourself and saying, you know what? I have faith in myself. I have confidence in myself. I can set myself up to succeed in this world, and I don't need to rely on anyone else. So anyways, taking self-custody still kind of scares me sometimes, but there's lots of people who want to help you and support you on that journey of doing it. And you can just think about, I have like my cash equivalent of Bitcoin, I have like my checking account, and then I have my retirement. If that's a mental model that helps you make these decisions, I like that one as well. So with that, I know we're now right at time, but any final questions or anything that leaves? Yeah, Mark.
Block size war.
Yes.
Within the Bitcoin community, there's a big debate about to what extent do we get to stick to Satoshi's initial invention?
Mm-hmm.
To what extent should we like do some add-ons and little tweaks
Mm-hmm.
better fit the newer use cases?
Yeah.
So there's a word that is I'm not sure that's a word in English, but it's ossification.
Yeah.
Like your bones in your body, like letting Bitcoin be ossified,
Mm-hmm.
be as it is,
Yeah.
instead of like Ethereum changing it every 2 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's interesting to have.
Yes. Maybe that we can have a more long, that's a little bit more nuance of a discussion, because like I think it was this summer or end of last year, there was a podcast with Mr. Michael Saylor that came out, and then on Bitcoin Twitter there was a lot of debate over sound money versus sovereign money. And so thank you for bringing that up. And I think to do it justice, we should set some time to really lay it out and go through it. But you're exactly right.
And just adding to that, if we believe the market is free. There's two ETFs, there's the ETFs for Bitcoins and ETFs for non-Bitcoin. And the inflows for Bitcoins are signaling that the market is wanting something that it is stable, it's classified, it's sound. For the for the other crypto ETFs, I think it's a net outflows at this point. Which is not enough.
Yeah, some people say that the price ratio between Ethereum that's turned from proof of work to proof of stake
Oh yeah, it's
and Bitcoin staying to proof of work,
gone.
like the ratio is like crazy.
Hmm.
Ethereum is like struggling going out.
Yeah. Yes. But thank you also everyone that joined on Zoom. Hope you all have a good rest of your night. Oh yeah, maybe people here well, I'm sorry you can't see the rest, but we have Malik, and then we have Ethan and Luis and Oladapo. Sorry. Oh, Ethan's in Canada, Luis is in Brazil, Malik, you are in Nigeria, Oladapo. Saw earlier, but I can't quite remember. But thank you all. I know it's a variety of times there.
Thank you all.
So have a good rest of your day and night, and we'll talk soon.
All right, great. Thanks, Ella.
Bye, Ethan. Thanks. Okay. Oh no, he can't.
You're one of the
Yeah.
following.
I'll set up the iPad next time so we can have that.